Why, oh why did I get a Sprinter? Well, hopefully this episode I can explain. So as some of you know, my first van was a 2015 Ram Promaster 2500 159 wheelbase that has a high roof, and that was a great van. I lived out of it for 3 years. And the reason I went with a Promaster in the beginning is mainly due to the dimensions and the overall price. So when I bought my van over 3 years ago, it was about $21,000 with 60,000 miles on it. And that was a good price for the time. And now if you go look at that same vehicle, same year, everything, you're probably not gonna get that same price. That's almost 18 grand more. The layout of the Promaster is really simple. It's like a giant rectangle. The cargo area is 12 feet long by 6.3 feet wide and 6.3 feet tall. That means you can fit a full-size bed widthwise without any modifications. You can stand up if you're an average-sized person. Plus, there's a 6-inch drop from the cab to the cargo area that gives you that 6'3" standing room, while keeping the van's overall height just above 8 feet, so you can still go through drive-thrus and things like that. The other thing that grabbed my attention was just how easy it was to drive and operate. With it being around 19.5 feet long, it was super similar to the length of the Tacoma that I had. So transitioning to a big van and having to park it in small spaces didn't feel that different. So with all these great features the Promaster had, why would I go and grab myself a Sprinter? Well, my life changed, and so have the needs for my vehicle. My Promaster was gas, which is great when I lived in flat old Indiana. So gas vehicles are good for several reasons. 1, they typically have a higher payload because they weigh less. 2, they usually have higher horsepower and acceleration, which is great for a flat place like the Midwest. 3, they're cheaper to purchase and maintain. And 4, gas prices are usually cheaper at the pump. The issue is when I'd head out west to places like Colorado, which is where I live now. Anytime we'd find ourselves in the mountains hitting elevation gain, the Promaster would really start to struggle. So that's when I started to look into diesel. While gas has the advantages in horsepower and payload, diesel wins hands down in torque. Okay, we're gonna make our own sound effects. It's the wind. So why is torque important? Well, picture this. You're riding on a bicycle on a flat road, and while you're pedaling, it's really easy to gain speed. That's horsepower. But then here comes this hill, and suddenly that easy ride starts to become a struggle because you gotta put a lot more force into the pedals in order to turn that back tire. That's torque. Am I making any sense right now? The same applies to the van. When you're riding on flat ground, horsepower is great. But once you start to hit elevation gains, rotational force, or torque, becomes super important, especially when you have your entire house in the back. So instead of screaming up the hill at high RPM, staying in the right lane, letting all these cars pass you by, the diesel engine lets you cruise comfortably along with traffic. So right now, I am climbing up this hill. I'm able to cruise at 65 miles per hour at about 3,000 RPM. I'm never like redlining or anything like that. And you can hear I'm not straining the engine right now. If I was in the Promaster, it'd be screaming. Passing vehicles, that never would have happened in the Promaster. That's a new experience in a van for me. But that's not the only advantage diesel has to gas. While gas usually has lower fuel prices, diesel has better fuel economy, so you can go further per gallon. Now I know we've all heard the complaints of high maintenance costs for a diesel engine, and that's because parts and qualified mechanics are harder to find. But on the flip side, diesel engines typically last longer. They've got simpler designs with more rugged parts. The engine requires fewer revolutions per minute, which causes less wear and tear over time. And diesel fuel is less corrosive than gas. And with all these engine characteristics, it leads to higher resale, because quite frankly, they last longer. So with all that said, I spent a lot of my time in Indiana parked. Yeah, I had small commutes back and forth to work, and I'd go on trips here and there, but that's really good for a gas vehicle. But now that I'm out in Colorado, I'm spending far more time going on trips, being in the mountains, putting miles under my tires, so diesel seemed like the better option. Which brings me to my next question. Out of all the diesel vans out there, why did I go with the Sprinter? Why not a Transit? Hell, why not save some money and go with a Freightliner, the Sprinter with a mustache disguise? Well, I was definitely hesitant at first. I'd be paying a premium price for a brand name, and because it's a Mercedes, I could expect to pay higher maintenance costs compared to other brands. And coming from a Promaster, I was a bit bummed at the width of the Sprinter. 74 inches was just a little small. I wouldn't really be able to put my bed widthwise without having to buy some extra flares, which would mean more costs. An extra 4 whole inches. Look at how comfortable.
Spacious.
It's also a heck of a lot taller, which meant my days of driving my home through the drive-thru were long gone. But even with all that, I couldn't shake the Sprinter, the quintessential vehicle of van life. You know, the one that your entitled neighbor gets their kid for their gap year. That van that always seems to come with a half-naked girl holding a cup of coffee. What is it that's so special about that vehicle? Is it the name? Is it simply sheep following the herd? Is there something there that I can't see through my countless hours of research that I'd only be able to know through firsthand experience behind the wheel? Well, I figured there's only one way to find out. By spending a shitload of money I don't have on a vehicle that's not worth what I paid. But so far, I've really liked it. I no longer clench my butt cheeks at the screaming of an engine climbing up a hill. I have an extra 2.5 feet, 170 inches, to create living space not only for me and Rocky, but Julie and Relly as well. Sure, this dash configuration looks like something out of my nightmares. What are these, beaver teeth? And I've got to remember that scary death light may come on every few thousand miles. But the pros have outweighed the cons, and I'm ready to really put this thing to the test. Yeah, it didn't come with an espresso serving bikini model, but I'm pretty happy with what I've got. You too. All right, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, share, comment. All that helps us get these videos in front of more people. And if you want to support the channel, go check out our Patreon page. That keeps us fed while we create this content. And then we do have a little bit of merch left if you want to go check that out as well. And with that, I think it's finally time we move on to the Sprinter build series. Stay tuned.
Yours are poop and mine are sex noises.
Whew, this is a breeze. That's good.